Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another deep dive. I'm so excited for this one.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting into this today.
Because today's mission is something that honestly applies to every single one of you listening. We are unpacking the secrets to making a lasting, powerful impression using insights from the book Eloquent Impact: The Art of Memorable Communication.
It's such a great source text. It totally reframes how we think about talking to people.
Exactly. And the whole goal today is to shortcut your path to becoming a brilliant communicator, to prove that it isn't about, having this massive dictionary in your head. It's about clarity, confidence, and respect.
Right. It's so much more practical than people realize.
Totally. So to kick us off, I want you to imagine two candidates waiting outside an interview room. They've got the exact same resume, the identical degree, same years of experience. Let's just call them both Raj.
Okay, so they're basically identical clones on paper.
Right. Literal clones. So the interviewer calls the first Raj in and asks that classic, terrifyingly broad question. Tell me about yourself. And he just sort of looks down at his hands, mumbles quietly, and says, I completed my studies and I'm looking for a job.
Ouch. Yeah, that's rough.
It is. But then the second Raj gets the exact same prompt. Only he smiles, makes solid eye contact, and says, I'm passionate about learning new things, solving problems, and contributing to an organization where I can grow.
Yeah, and we all instinctively know the second Raj gets hired on the spot.
Instantly. No contest. Okay, let's unpack this. What specific biological and psychological levers did he pull to make that happen?
That is honestly the perfect framework for this whole discussion, because we have this tendency to view charisma as a genetic lottery, right? Like you're either born a natural orator who commands a room effortlessly, or you're just doomed to be socially awkward forever.
Right, like it's a fixed trait. You either have it or you don't.
Exactly. But Eloquent Impact completely dismantles that myth. It shows that leaving a powerful, lasting impression, it isn't magic. It's actually a highly learnable series of, specific strategic micro-adjustments.
Micro-adjustments. I love that. So let's look under the hood of those adjustments, because starting off with what I found to be the biggest shocker in the text, the foundation of elite communication actually begins when your mouth is firmly shut.
Yeah, the listening paradox. It's wild. The common everyday misconception is that communication is basically synonymous with talking.
Right, like if you're not making sound waves, you aren't communicating.
Exactly. But the text argues that the absolute best communicators operate as elite receivers first. They listen to actually understand the underlying framework of what the other person is saying, rather than, just queuing up their next response.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here, though. I have to challenge the feasibility of that in the real world.
Sure, go for it.
Because if you're in a hyper-competitive corporate environment or like a loud networking event and you're just silently absorbing information, don't you just become part of the furniture?
No.
I mean, how does silence demonstrate your intelligence when everyone else is literally shouting over each other to prove their worth?
That is the exact trap highly ambitious people fall into. They think they have to dominate the airspace to justify being in the room. But the text makes a really critical distinction here. You aren't just sitting there passively.
Okay, so what are you doing?
You're gathering data to ask a highly targeted question. Look, when you merely wait for a gap in the audio just to launch your own monologue, the other person's brain registers that. They know you aren't actually engaged.
Oh, absolutely. You can feel when someone's just waiting for their turn to speak.
Right. And it triggers a subtle defensive response because they feel dismissed. But when you use silence to formulate a response based entirely on what they just shared, you demonstrate a much higher level of cognitive processing.
So you're turning their output into your raw material. You aren't a megaphone, you're a processor.
Precisely. And the source provides a great metric for this regarding how we ask questions. So imagine a colleague finishes a presentation. The standard low-effort response is a flat question like, did you like the project?
Which is a complete dead end. It requires a binary yes or no, and the conversation stalls.
Right, exactly. But if you've been actively listening, you can ask something like, what part of the project did you find most useful, and what could we improve?
Oh, wow. That shifts the entire dynamic.
It does. You are forcing them to analyze their own experience. By facilitating their deeper thinking, they subconsciously associate that intellectual breakthrough with you.
That makes perfect sense. You're acting as a catalyst. But I mean, pulling off a layered question like that requires a delay. You can't just snap back instantly the millisecond they finish speaking.
And that delay is a massive strategic advantage. Pausing is highlighted in the text as a core mechanical skill. Before speaking, elite communicators filter their thoughts through 3 specific criteria.
Which are?
Is my message clear? Is it helpful? And is this the right time and place to say it?
Running that mental checklist definitely takes a second or two. And we are so deeply conditioned to view silence as awkwardness that we panic, right? We fill the void with ums and ohs, or we just rush into half-baked thoughts.
Because we just want to keep the noise going.
Exactly. But you're saying that an intentional pause actually projects power.
It does. It signals to the listener's autonomic nervous system that you are not in a state of fight or flight. You aren't scrambling for words. You are totally comfortable holding the silence, which in turn makes the listener feel secure in your presence.
Wow. Okay, so we've utilized the pause, we've gathered our data, and we've formulated a response that passes the clear, helpful, timely filter.
Right.
But none of that matters if the literal words leaving our mouth create friction for the listener's brain. Let's talk about the complexity trap, because this is where people try to sound sophisticated and just completely sabotage themselves.
Oh, it's such a fascinating phenomenon. The instinct to use massive, convoluted words usually stems from deep-seated insecurity.
Oh, for sure. We want to prove we belong in the room.
Exactly. So we assume complexity equals authority. The source illustrates this with a stark, almost comical contrast. Imagine looking at a colleague and saying, I am experiencing a deficiency in comprehending the provided information.
That sounds like a legal liability waiver. It's physically exhausting just to process that sentence.
Contrast that with simply saying, I'm having difficulty understanding this information. The underlying psychology here revolves around cognitive load.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Well, when you use dense multisyllabic jargon, you're forcing the listener's brain to work overtime.
Yeah.
They have to decode your vocabulary before they can even begin to evaluate your actual idea.
You're essentially taxing their mental RAM. If they're spending all their processing power translating your words, they have zero bandwidth left to absorb the message.
Yes, and worse, they might subconsciously resent you for making them work so hard to understand a simple concept.
Nobody likes feeling dumb.
Exactly. The text is adamant that simplicity creates a faster, stronger neural connection. The goal of communication is to transfer an idea from your brain to theirs with zero friction. Simplicity isn't a lack of intelligence, it is the ultimate refinement of it.
I love viewing it as friction, and that friction doesn't just come from vocabulary, does it? It comes from the visual data we're transmitting at the exact same time. The text dives deeply into this idea of a silent language, how our physical presence can completely overwrite our verbal message.
This brings us to the mechanics of the nervous system. What's fascinating here is how your body speaks before your mouth does.
Okay, give me an example.
Imagine someone walking up to a podium. Their shoulders are slumped forward, they're actively avoiding eye contact, shifting their weight nervously from foot to foot.
And their voice is wavering.
Right, and then they say the words, I am very confident.
The brain immediately flags a massive mismatch. You wouldn't believe them for a single second.
Because verbal language is a relatively new evolutionary development for humans. Body language, on the other hand, is ancient. It's deeply tied to our primal survival instincts.
So we're hardwired to trust physical signals because they're infinitely harder to fake.
Exactly. If there is a discrepancy between the audio and the video, the human brain will trust the video every single time.
So how do we consciously calibrate the video? I mean, we know we shouldn't slump, but we also don't want to look like we're aggressively posturing or staring people down. The text talks about micro adjustments here rather than sweeping behavioral changes, right?
It's fundamentally about alignment. Physically opening up your posture, uncrossing your arms, keeping your chest open. It doesn't just signal receptivity to the other person. It physically allows your diaphragm to expand.
Which changes how you sound.
Exactly. That expansion gives your voice deeper resonance and slows your breathing, which then signals to your own nervous system that you are safe.
It's a biological feedback loop. Your body tricks your brain into actually feeling the confidence you're trying to project. And the text mentions the speed of your voice, playing a huge role here as well.
It does. When we rush our words, it subconsciously signals that we feel we're taking up too much time, that our ideas aren't valuable enough to linger on.
Right, like you're apologizing for speaking.
But speaking at a moderate, deliberate pace inherently demands respect. It shows you value your own words, which encourages the listener to value them too.
Along with natural eye contact, not a predatory, unblinking stare that makes people uncomfortable, but simply checking in visually to ensure the neural connection is still active.
Yeah, you're just verifying that the signal is still being received.
Okay, so let's say the audio and video are perfectly aligned. We're using low friction language, our diaphragm is open, our pace is deliberate, we're presenting perfectly. But presenting perfectly doesn't guarantee the listener will remember a single thing you said by tomorrow morning.
No, it doesn't.
You can be incredibly polished and still be completely forgettable.
This is the threshold between being a competent speaker and a truly memorable one. The text identifies storytelling as the ultimate mechanism for memory retention.
Because we aren't robots.
Right. We like to think we are entirely rational creatures who make decisions based purely on data, but we are actually emotional creatures who use data to justify our emotional decisions.
Which completely explains the example the source gives about workplace collaboration. If a manager stands up in a meeting and says, "Teamwork is important for success," it's factually correct, but it's totally sterile.
It bounces right off the listener's brain because there's no emotional hook to grab onto.
But the text suggests framing the exact same concept differently. Like, imagine a football team where every single player desperately wants to score the goal, but absolutely nobody is willing to pass the ball. What happens to that team?
It's immediate and visceral. You instantly picture the chaos on the field.
Yeah, players colliding, the frustration, the inevitable dysfunction.
What you're experiencing there is neural coupling. When you merely list facts, only the language processing centers of the listener's brain are active. But when you tell a story, their brainwaves begin to synchronize with yours.
Wow.
If you describe motion, the motor cortex in their brain lights up. If you describe the frustration of the players, the emotional centers activate. You are no longer just transmitting data. You're literally forcing them to experience the concept alongside you.
That shared neurological simulation is what makes a message stick permanently. That is incredible. Storytelling is essentially an empathy engine.
That's a great way to put it.
But surely the type of simulation has to change depending on who you are talking to. I mean, you wouldn't use a casual football analogy with a highly formal board of directors, right?
And that brings us to the crucial skill of reading the room. The source emphasizes that a master communicator is essentially a chameleon. You must tune your frequency to the receiver.
Okay, tuning the frequency.
Right. Using casual, relatable phrasing with peers builds rapport. Using structured, evidence-based language with executives builds credibility. It isn't about being fake or abandoning your personality. It's recognizing that different locks require different keys.
But here is where the rubber really meets the road for most people. It's incredibly easy to tune your frequency when everyone in the room agrees with you and the stakes are low.
Oh, sure.
What does the text say about communicating under extreme pressure? Because when someone criticizes my work or completely dismisses my idea in front of a group, my heart rate spikes, my vision narrows, and all that deliberate pacing and storytelling goes right out the window.
The source considers this the ultimate crucible of communication. Anybody can be eloquent when they are comfortable. True mastery is demonstrated during conflict.
So what happens biologically in those moments?
The biological instinct during a disagreement is either to fight escalating the emotion and volume or to flee by shutting down completely.
Both of which completely destroy the connection and your credibility. So what's the fix?
The strategy outlined in the text is to brutally separate the problem from the emotion. When emotions run high, your vocabulary must become simpler, your pace must become slower, and your words must remain fiercely respectful.
Focus on the problem, not the emotion. So instead of saying, "You are completely wrong about this," which is a direct attack on their identity and guarantees a defensive response, you say, "I have a different perspective on this data."
Exactly. By keeping the focus on the perspective in the data, you de-escalate. You refuse to take the emotional bait. And what's crucial here is the long-term impact.
Oh, so.
The text notes that months down the line, people will likely forget the specific details of the argument, but they will permanently remember that you maintained your composure, controlled your nervous system, and treated them with respect when things got heated. That is the impression that lasts.
Okay, so we've mapped out the entire anatomy of an impressive interaction. We know we need to listen as an active receiver, pause to filter our thoughts, use low-friction language, align our physical posture, leverage storytelling for neural coupling, and separate the problem from the emotion under pressure.
Right. It's a brilliant theoretical framework.
But practically, If I try to consciously manage all of those levers at the exact same time during my next performance review, my brain is going to short circuit.
Which is why the source distills this entire philosophy down into a highly actionable sequential formula.
Oh, thank goodness. What is it?
Listen, think, speak clearly, use confident body language, connect with people. It moves logically from internal processing to external delivery to emotional resonance.
Listen, think, speak clearly, confident body language, connect. It's a great checklist. But even a checklist requires mental bandwidth in the moment. How do we take these from conscious, exhausting efforts to unconscious habits?
By treating communication exactly like a physical muscle. You cannot read a book about doing a push-up, never hit the gym, and expect your chest to get stronger. You have to put the muscle under tension.
So it requires reps.
Exactly. The text insists that eloquence is built through daily, isolated practice.
The daily reps. And the exercises the text suggests are actually quite uncomfortable. The one that really stood out to me was the requirement to speak out loud for 10 minutes a day, specifically while recording your own voice.
Oh yeah, it is universally despised. Almost no one enjoys the sound of their own recorded voice.
It is excruciating. You sound like a completely different person. But the source argues it's the absolute only way to bypass your ego and get objective data on your own mechanics.
Right. When you listen to the playback, you can't deny reality. You realize, wow, I say you know every 12 seconds.
Or my pitch goes up at the end of every sentence, making everything I say sound like a hesitant question.
It builds brutal self-awareness. And from there, you can make targeted micro-adjustments. The text also advocates for reading aloud. Taking a well-written article and reading it out loud allows you to practice breathing, intentional pacing, and clear articulation.
Without the cognitive load of having to invent the words yourself.
Exactly. You're isolating the delivery muscle from the content creation muscle. You practice them separately so they work together seamlessly later.
And the final piece of the practice protocol is active observation, right? Don't just passively watch confident speakers dissect them.
Yes. When you watch a great presentation or observe a charismatic leader in your office, look for the mechanics. How long do they hold eye contact? What do they do with their hands when they aren't speaking? How long are their intentional pauses?
You reverse engineer their charisma. And over time, by recording yourself, practicing your delivery, and analyzing the greats, that 5-step formula stops being a checklist that eats up your mental RAM.
Right. It becomes muscle memory. You start doing it automatically.
You transition from thinking about how to speak to simply connecting with the person in front of you.
Which is the whole point.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? I think the most liberating takeaway from this entire deep dive is that the natural-born orator is a total myth.
100%.
The people who effortlessly command a room didn't win a genetic lottery. They just mastered these micro-adjustments before you met them. The goal isn't to be a flawless, robotic speaker who never stumbles over a word.
Actually, perfection is alienating.
Right.
It creates distance between you and the listener. The true goal is clarity, confidence, and a genuine desire to connect.
Which perfectly tees up the final overarching piece of wisdom from the source text. It's a principle that guides all of these mechanics we've discussed today.
The book summarizes its entire philosophy with this single thought. People may forget your exact words, but they will always remember how you made them feel.
How you made them feel. When you use simple language, you make them feel smart because they understand you easily. When you pause and listen, you make them feel valued. When you tell a visceral story, you make them feel deeply connected.
It really all comes back to that.
It does. So I want to leave you with a piece of homework to explore on your own. Tomorrow, find the most charismatic, impressive communicator in your life, whether it's your boss, your partner, or a friend. Watch them incredibly closely.
And look for the invisible mechanics.
Yes. Which of these silent tools, the steady eye contact, the specific follow-up questions, the deliberate pauses, are they using on you without you even realizing it? Think back to those two candidates, the two Rajas, sitting outside the interview room.
Ask yourself which one you want to be.
Exactly. When you walk into your next high-stakes conversation, are you just transmitting the bare, forgettable facts of your life? Or are you leveraging these tools to actually make a lasting connection?